Hi everyone, it's nice to see you. I'm Joanne, the head baker at the college. A lot of you probably don't know there's a bake shop at the college. We're on the second floor above the Thorn Kitchen, and we make all your cookies and brownies and pies and cakes and pastries and Kaiser rolls for lunch, and breads at dinner and rolls and the stuff for the special functions, and then we ship it to Malton and to Smith, and we keep it here at Thorn. And one of the most requested items for functions and catered events is the Bowdoin Log. And they're also served at special meals like the convening dinner, the commencing dinner, the holiday meal. And I'm going to show you how to make that today. During the school year, but over some of the summer functions as well, we make about 12,000 Bowdoin logs. And we even shipped 350 Bowdoin logs this year down to Boston, Massachusetts for the trustees' capital campaign kickoff at the Westin Hotel. So that was a new adventure for us, packing them in dry ice and getting them there still frozen. The recipe is really simple, and the technique is really simple too, although it takes a little bit of practice to make 12,000 of them look just right, and we like to have them look just right. But not to worry, even the most misshapen logs can be fixed by cutting off the ends, plating them, drizzling them with the sauce, putting the almonds on them. That makes them look great no matter what, and they always taste good. So even if you're not a perfect roller, the flavor will never disappoint. First, you need some premium vanilla ice cream. And I have here Gifford's 14%, which is what we use at Bowdoin. You could also use, if you can't find Gifford's, Ben & Jerry's, Brigham's, Shane's of Maine, any premium brand ice cream that's over 14% butterfat. That sticks together, rolls better, and it's just a better product overall. The 10% regular ice creams are a little more airy and don't make as good of a product, not as rich. The next thing you need to buy is famous chocolate wafers. This is the real secret to the Bowdoin Log, is the famous chocolate wafers. It's a crisp wafer cookie. It's really dark chocolate, so it sets off the vanilla flavor as well. They're kind of bittersweet, and they give the log a nice crispy coat. Here you can get them at Hannaford and Shaw's. They're a Nabisco product, so nationally probably any big chain. Oreos and sandwich cookies don't work well. They have the filling in them, and they don't crush well. They don't stick on the logs well, so don't even try it. The Bowdoin logs are not hard to make, but there's several things to do to get them just right. The first being, it's best to put an empty pan on the counter under another pan so it's not sitting on the counter that has been pre-frozen in the freezer so the ice cream will stay cold. Then we're going to scoop them into balls and put them on a frozen pan. I have this down below because it's easier to get good leverage, and sometimes the ice cream is really hard. And you want it firm so you can roll it, but you don't want it so firm that you break your arm trying to roll it. So this is our first step. And when we make these, we get about 80 out of one of these 3-gallon tubs, and around commencement time and Christmas, I'm buying 3 tubs at least 3 times a week. And my baker Dan usually does most of the scooping and a lot of the rolling, and then in the afternoon I bring them back out and cut the ends off and package them and get them ready to go. So here's a few all scooped. Another little secret is before you start to roll, to make a divot in your crumbs and just rub the ball of ice cream onto that to get the pan a little sticky. Also, I have a wet towel under the pan so the pan doesn't slide. And then you just simply take your ball of ice cream and roll it back and forth like this. And you're not really smushing it. I'm not putting a lot of pressure. My hand's really tight. And I'm trying not to use my fingers very much, because if you use your fingers, I think you can probably see that, you get those ridges. So it just happens really quickly. And like I said, we get about 80 out of one of those tubs. So we roll the balls, put them in the freezer, let them freeze up again, and then start to roll them in the pan, so that by the time we have like 40 or 50 on this half sheet by the time we're done scooping the balls. And by the time that happens, they're ready to go on these pans where there are much less. So yucky gloves. And I'm just going to take these into the freezer, and I'll be right back. These are some balls that I scooped this morning. And it is really important to scoop onto a frozen pan, especially on those hot days. Probably if you're doing less than 100, that it's not quite as, but if you're, while you're rolling your balls, you could take the time to grind up your chocolate wafers. The best way to do that, the easiest way, is to, see how those are so much nicer to roll and so much firmer. Sorry for all the clattering. And grind up your wafers. The easiest way is in a food processor. But if you don't have a food processor, you could always take a meat mallet or anything that's got some substantial weight. Put those crumbs, put those cookies, break them up, put them in a Ziploc bag, a heavy plastic bag, and just start smashing them. It's very therapeutic. It's harder to do it like that because you really want those crumbs to be fine. See, those are like sand. There aren't any real big chunks in them. And the best way to do that is a food processor. I guess you could probably do it with a ricer. I've never tried that. So there we have some Bowdoin logs. And one more minute. I think of everything until I'm here. This recipe can be found on the dining website. And so what I was saying about even the worst log and the misshapen log looks so much better when you cut those ends off and add the fudge is absolutely true, because you can see this log is kind of thinner on this end, fatter on that end, not really the greatest shape. And this one that I have in front of me was kind of the same way. The best way to serve the log, this is our homemade hot fudge, is to take a little dollop of fudge, put the log on top of the fudge, and then more of that gooey, hot fudge sauce. And this sauce is really so easy. I literally, so here's the log, a few toasted almonds on there, and doesn't that look great? And it's going to taste great. But the fudge, that recipe is on the website as well, on the dining website. You go to menus, and then you'll see a little sidebar on the left, and you click on recipes, and it's right there. But this is literally so easy that at 12:30, I thought, oh, I didn't make any fudge. So I put my pans on, goes in a double boiler. I threw in a third of a stick of butter, a couple of cups of milk, threw some confectioner's sugar in there, some unsweetened chocolate wafers, a little bit of vanilla, and then walked around and set up. And probably 5 or 10 minutes later, this is what I had. It's nice, it's thick, and it's pretty impressive. For no work, you can tell people that you made fudge sauce, and they'll think that you slaved. I won't tell them any different. So that's basically it for the Bowdoin Log. It looks like it would take a long time, but it really doesn't. And I think that's about all I have. If you have questions, then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Any questions, Nate?
Not right now. If you'd like to type in any questions, I'm happy to read them over to Joanne and get them answered for you.
And then you can take these delectable ends. And a lot of times you might see them in the dining hall on the ice cream bar. So as I cut the ends and package them at night, I put them in a big bucket. And then when I have enough, I send them down to the dining hall, and you'll see them on the ice cream bar as Bowdoin Log ice cream.
So Joanne, there's 2 questions. What's the name of the wafers that you use?
It's Nabisco Famous Chocolate Wafers. Let's see. That's what the package looks like. They're just that tube.
Great. And
Famous chocolate wafers.
And what can we use in replacement of a double boiler?
You can use, actually, I don't have a double boiler per se. I have a pan that's the same size as this, and I put the water in the bottom pan, and I put this pan on top, and it fits, but it doesn't really fit. You can also use a pan and put water on it, and you could put a metal bowl or a heavy Pyrex bowl on top of that. Anything that will take that heat, because the bottom of the bowl doesn't hit the water. The water isn't deep enough, so it hits the bottom of the bowl. What's melting the chocolate and heating the butter and milk is steam.
Great. How long would they stay good for, and should you keep them in the freezer?
Yes, you can keep them in the freezer. If you stack them up like so, I recommend that you put like parchment paper or wax paper in between them. And it's also best, like, see, these are getting soft, and you can see little vanilla traces from where I just stacked them. So work quickly, and if they start to get soft, put like 3 or 4 in the freezer, then go back and do 3 or 4 more, and put 3 or 4 more in the freezer. When we roll them, sometimes we don't get through a whole pan, and so we end up putting them in the freezer and going back and adding to that pan. And they'll stay in the freezer for a month. Keep them towards the back so they don't get thawed and frozen as you open and close the door of your freezer. And maybe in back of some things so that they stay nice and frozen. But they'll stay a long time.
Do you have a gluten-free option for the wafers?
We have a gluten-free option here, but it's basically any chocolate wafer cookie that you can make. If you made, say, chocolate shortbread with a gluten-free flour, you could grind that up into fine crumbs and use that. What you're looking for is something that will produce this powdery substance. The local option that we've had here, it's from Maine Flavors, and it's really hard to get them to go on because they're a little more moist than than this, but I have done them with my gluten-free chocolate shortbread, and that works fine.
What is your favorite dessert to make at Bowdoin?
I love to do those parfaits and puddings and mousses and those fancy things like that. I've recently been assigned that in the last couple of years, and so I've had such fun playing with that, making the different flavors and layering them in the cups and putting funky things in there like worms and gummy bears and chocolate wafers between the banana and chocolate layered black bottom banana parfaits. So I've had a lot of fun doing those. Baking, I always love to bake pies. And I don't know, when I first started baking, pies were a real challenge for me. Pie crust was a real challenge. And so once I mastered it, I just love doing it.
There's a request to repeat how to make the ice cream into a neat log shape.
Okay, let me go and get the ones that we froze, the balls that we froze, and I'll give another little demo. I rolled that, so we're stuck. But we'll just take some pretty firm ice cream out of the middle.
And Joanne, with the ice cream, is the most important thing that it's 14% butter fat?
Yeah, I think so, because that seems to roll better. The other ice creams, the cheaper ice creams, are more airy. So I have another thing that's important is when I showed you how to like part the crumbs and get a little stickiness going on. See that spot right there? That's stickiness. And so when it goes across there, it kind of heals. And you just roll it back and forth. Like when you're a kid, you were making Play-Doh snakes. And so that's what, that glove is kind of dirty. That's what you're gonna end up with. And it's very little pressure. I'm not really pushing down on that ice cream. I'm just kind of guiding it. And you can see my hand, my fingers are really up. And I'm using just the palm of my hand so I don't get those finger marks in there. Those finger marks, I'm a little quirky about that.
Well, great. Any more questions? Well, seeing none, thank you, Joanne, for taking the time, and thank you all for attending. Hopefully we'll do this again soon.
I hope so. If you have questions, you can email me. I'm jadams2@bowdoin.edu, and hopefully we'll see you in person soon. Stay well.